This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and on the sidelines of the Discovery Financial Planning Conference recently, where one of the speakers was a man called Peter Rosengard. Peter Rosengard is an insurance salesman. He's been selling insurance for 46 years. I want some of his war stories from the trenches of selling insurance, but also some broader themes on selling. They tell me, Peter Rosengard, that you are the world's greatest insurance salesman. What makes a great insurance salesman?
Well, first of all, I certainly wouldn't say that, and I don't know who said that, but it's very, very nice of them to say that. I'm quite sure there are far more successful people than me somewhere, but you know, I'm a life insurance salesman. I'm not an insurance salesman. I only sell life insurance.
But you sold your first life
card.
Insurance policy was sold within 17 minutes of you falling into a job you didn't really want.
I live in London. I've lived there my whole life, the greatest city in the world, as you know. In answer to your question, Bruce, that first sale, yeah, that was when we had a Cannes presentation, and I'd been given the carrier bag with Superman on the outside by the guy who recruited me in Oxford Circus, by Piccadilly Circus in London. I was 22.
But what was it about the sales process that got you? Because once you sold your first insurance policy was sold as you walked out of the office. You jumped into back of a London taxi.
Yeah.
And
Ray Langton, his name was.
You read the insurance document.
I read the word for word. After about, the first lines were, I've recently been talking to lots of successful businessmen like yourself. Of course, he was the first person I'd ever spoken to. A week earlier, I was a DJ in a club in Stockholm introducing the new Yardbirds, who became Led Zeppelin a week or two later. So this is a little different for me.
Did you ever sell any insurance to Led Zeppelin members?
I sold life insurance to lots of rock stars because I looked like a rock star. You should get the picture. You saw the
we'll
picture.
Get the picture.
Hippie,
we'll get the. You look a little bit like George Harrison.
Well, everybody looked like that.
You
know, some people look like Brad Pitt. I look like Charles Manson, unfortunately. But anyway, that was the look, and I was, you know, jeans, a t-shirt, and long hair, and I was selling to guys in London, the swinging 60s. I was selling to the fashion guys, the music guys, the bands.
But with zero training, zero experience, you've got what in Yiddish is termed chutzpah. Because you've never shied.
My dad's from Glasgow. I'm a Hebrew Highlander, the Rosengards.
Yeah.
I guess I've got chutzpah. That means for your non-Jewish visitor, that's the gall, the cheek, the balls to go for it. Yes.
This audience understands chutzpah. You've never shied away from an opportunity. And I suppose in sales generally, not just life insurance.
Well, I love life. I forgot to tell them. I never got to give half my speech really, but I really wanted to say at the end of it, I mean, I've never gone to work in my life. It's just been fun and adventure. I mean, you know what I'm saying, the beautiful women, you know, the groupies, you know, the glamour of life insurance, the beautiful women who'll stop at nothing to buy life insurance. It's a very well-kept secret, Bruce.
The power of selling is that ability to talk to strangers, and you would go up to strangers in the street on King's Road.
I'd go up to anybody. Listen, what's the worst? If you don't ask, you don't get. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? They say no. Next. My whole career has been spent on next. Every no has brought me closer to a yes. But you see, in the early days, I came into this business not just to save children from the yawning jaws of poverty should their parents be widowed. I was 22 years old. I came in it to make a living like everybody else. I came in it because I couldn't think of anything else to do, and it seemed a good way to make a living. But very quickly, over the years, I learned, and that's a great reason to go into this business, to make a wonderful living if you're successful, like any profession. And it has become a profession for me and thousands of other, call yourself financial advisors or estate planners. I like to call myself a life insurance salesman because I like to look in the mirror, and that's what I actually do. I sell life insurance. But I've learned how important and how valuable it is, and I've seen families that have been torn apart when their husband dies young and leaves young kids, and they have to move out of their house because they had a huge mortgage, and they have to take them out of great schools, and everything he dreamed for his family has been destroyed in a blitzkrieg. We used to have the Blitz in London before.
Absolutely.
The blitzkrieg. And life insurance means that will never happen, ever happen. His family, whatever happens to him, and a lot of young men don't make 65. The check that I deliver will make sure the kids can go to school and be educated and have the holidays.
That's the sales. That's the sales.
No, that's the true.
Yeah,
look, let me explain something to you. I spend my life insurance premiums are many thousands of pounds a month myself. I have a daughter who I love to pieces. I will do, and I would take a bullet for my daughter. I'm sure you have children.
I do.
You
I
would
do.
take a bullet for your child. Every
Some
father
days.
would.
Some days
well,
I would.
every
yes.
father would, and that's why people buy life insurance, because it's a gift of love
Now,
to their family. And I speak on behalf of the children.
Yeah.
I say to a
But that's
prospect,
your sales
I say
pitch
to him,
is,
I'm
yes.
talking on behalf of your children. Let me see your family, because if you don't believe in it, and I'm an evangelist, because I know what life insurance does, it saves families' lives. And I've seen it happen, and I've delivered. And my clients who've been with me, I have dozens, hundreds and hundreds of clients who've been with me for 30, 40 years, and they come back. Every year they buy more and more as they become more successful. So I must be doing something incredibly valuable for them, don't you think? Otherwise they wouldn't keep coming back.
Your secret seems to be you do volume rather than scale. So you've got hundreds of meetings every single year. You will sell.
Well, you've got to remember, a
low
lot
value
of my clients are now in their 60s. I'm 68. I'll be 70 next year. So a lot of my clients are full up.
Yeah.
You know, so now we're doing estate planning for other clients. I don't do an awful lot. I'm very proud to tell you that, you know, 24 years ago I sold the world's largest life insurance policy for $100 million from a cold call to an American billionaire.
But that's the chutzpah. Tell me the chutzpah story, please, because it's a good
that
one.
story?
Yeah, that's
Well, I'd spent my life, and I have spent my career selling lots of small policies. I've never been interested in, you know, I've never suffered from what we call in our industry big case-itis. Big case-itis is the other salesman you talk to many times. How are you doing, John? Oh, I'm working on the big one. Okay, how's it going? 6 months later, how are you doing? I really think the big one's coming along. What have you done in the last 6 months? Well, nothing, because I'm working on the big one. This conversation normally takes place about 6 months before the man is out of the business. And thank God I've never suffered from big case-itis.
Tell me about your big case.
Because the big case never happens. My big case in 1990, which got me in the Guinness Book of Records until last year, incredibly, for 24 years, he said modestly. Well, life's too short to be modest. I'm very proud of this. It started because I read in I decided to sell the world's largest life insurance policy, as one does. I'd read the largest policy in history was in $34 or $32 million in the Guinness Book of Records. And it was to a Texas rancher or something. And I've read about this for years, it had been in the book, and I thought, surely it's time I could do it. I mean, I was looking for somebody to sell it to, and one day I knew it'd have to be a hugely rich person to qualify for 100. I didn't even know how big it could be. I just wanted to beat that record. And one morning in June, I think it was 1990, July, I opened my newspaper in London, and there was a headline business story, all over, the whole media were covering it all over the world. MCA Universal had bought a record company on the life of the owner of the record company, and it was, his name was David Geffen, and he was a brilliant genius at discovering new stars. But I read they paid $500 million, I think it was $500 million, and I knew that meant they weren't buying plant or equipment, they were buying his genius at discovering a new Guns N' Roses, which he discovered, for example, or a new Madonna or whatever. And so I thought, well, what I did was I called the president from a call box before mobile phones. Well, I've tracked him down. It wasn't easy. I kept calling back, asking for promotions and advertising and market research and departments. And finally, I kept saying, is Sid there? No. Is Sid there? No. Is Sid? And finally, somebody said, no, it's still in Florence at the film festival or something. So, you know, it doesn't matter how famous you are, whether you're the president of the United States, you have to go to the bathroom at some time and change for dinner. So I called him, and at 7 o'clock, a couple of hours later, and I got put through right away, and he answered the phone, and I said, Sid, Sid, I didn't know him from Adam. I said, Sid, I'm Peter Rosengard. I'm a life insurance salesman in London calling to congratulate you on this fantastic deal you've done. You've left EMI, who thought they bought Geffen, with egg on their face, and clearly, you know, this is all 25 years ago. and
he was impressed by the fact that you cared.
He said, how can I help you? I said, well, he wasn't stupid. He knew I wanted something. I said, well, but he was touched that I called to congratulate him. I now congratulate everybody I ever meet. Because a lot of people never congratulate you. When you do a great interview, does your producer ever say,
well, my producer's about to rip my head off because we're going over time. How did you seal the deal, Peter?
I called him and he said, how can I help you? I said, I've had one question for you. He said, well, I said, if the answer's positive, we progress it. If it's negative, I'll say congratulations again on this fantastic deal. It's all over the media. Well done. He said, what is your question, Peter? And I said, well, if David walks under a truck, the gentleman walks under a truck on the Hollywood Boulevard, David Geffen, and is killed in 5 minutes' time by a road accident, am I right in assuming that MCA Universal have just lost hundreds of millions of dollars? And then I shut up, which is extremely difficult for me, as you can tell.
Yes, it is.
And I knew the first one to speak would lose the deal, and it felt like an hour. It was probably 10 seconds of silence, and then I couldn't stand it anymore. And I said, so what do you think? He said, well, Peter, he said, you know what chutzpah means? I said, Sid, my name's Peter Rosengard. I know what chutzpah is. I'm a Hebrew Highlander. He said, well, Peter, you've really got chutzpah calling me, but your timing is immaculate. And I said, thank you, Sid. Do you think it's a good idea? He said, what do you propose? He said, I said, well, I propose I obtain the world's largest life insurance policy in the history of life insurance on the life of David Geffen. And he said, and I thought he said, well, how much would that be? I had no idea. I hadn't even thought this through. I didn't know that I was going to be out. And I knew the biggest was the 34 million on the rancher's wife in Texas. And I knew I couldn't say 30. So I said, off the top of my head, I said, $100 million I think I could obtain for you.
And he bet.
And I thought he'd say, you're out of your mind, and put the phone down. And he just said, okay. So and my heart's going boom, boom, boom. And he said, well, how much would that be? And I had no idea, but I knew what £1 million cost. So I just added two more zeros. And he said, okay, right, okay, So, and I said, well, what do you think? He said, is it a good idea? He said, yes. A day later, I was sitting with his right-hand guy in London. 4 weeks later, the board met of MCA and voted to buy the world's largest life insurance policy for $100 million.
And it's a record that's stuck for 24 years. It's called chutzpah, and it's also called talking them in circles until they give up. Peter Rosengard,
Thank
really
you very
nice
much.
to meet you. He held the record, incidentally, at one of the world's biggest insurance companies for 12 years, consecutive years, for selling the most life insurance.